What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so Paul George is going to take a break from podcasting to focus on a championship. So he told his podcast listeners, quote, I want to let the Podcast P family know that after today's episode with Dwight, I plan to take a break from the pod just to focus on getting my body right, getting mentally right, and help this squad make a push towards our goal to finish the season out. Give ourselves a chance to be in contentions to compete for a championship. Now, of course, many people, including myself, have done videos talking about Paul George's lack of production this year and comparing it to his enthusiasm towards his flourishing podcast. Talking about how he has, for instance, had more uploaded podcast videos to YouTube than he did field goals made this season. I did a video recently talking about how he has fewer 20-point games this season. Now, remember, Paul George is probably going to be a Hall of Famer. He has fewer 20-point games than the Boston Celtics. I'll be forgetting his name. The boy that come off the bench, who is a good player, but is a six-man a year candidate and makes only 1/7 of what Paul George makes this year. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now. But anyway, look, this is how I feel about it. Congrats to Paul George. I'm not going to get on here and mock him and be like, hey, what you doing it for? Then what the fuck are we complaining about him doing the podcast then? If we, what I'm saying, at the same time, we're going to mock him, as I'm seeing people doing on social media, for just continuing the podcast. Some people just like to mock people just to be mocking them for any reason, or make jokes about people. I like this move because it's just not a good look for a guy that's making approximately $50 million this season to be showing more enthusiasm off the court than on the court. Just not a good look. I mean, he's only averaging 16 points per game. This is a guy that's supposed to be like a primetime guy. You know what I'm saying? He's supposed to be the second best player on this team next to Joel Embiid. He's supposed to be a guy that's supposed to be giving you 22, 23 points a night. Something around those lines. And instead, Paul George is giving you very little. He's been injury prone this year. He's been rather injury prone the last couple of years, to be honest with you. And kudos to him for talking about getting his body right, getting his mind right to compete and play at a much higher and more consistent level this season for the Philadelphia 76ers. But having said all of that, there are certain realities here. The Sixers are now nearly 60 games into the season. They're only 20, I believe, in 37. There's only so much you can do at this point. Let me see something right quick. Give me 1 second. Looking at the Eastern Conference standings right now in the NBA. Who would have ever thought going into this season that the Pistons will have a significantly better record than the Sixers. I'm telling you, man, sometimes the NBA can be very, very, very surprising. So, of course, the Cavaliers number 1, Celtics number 2, Knicks number 3, and the Knicks have their own problems. They're 37-20, but they can't beat the top tier creme de la creme teams. The Pacers are 4th, the Bucks are 5th, the Pistons are 6th, and the way the Bucks are going, they might leapfrog the Bucks and the Pacers. The Magic are 7th, the Hawks are 8th, 27-31. So the Pistons are the cutoff as far as teams that are guaranteed right now to go into the postseason. The play-in would involve the Magic, the Hawks, the Heat, and the Bulls. The Magic are 29-31. The Hawks are 27-31. The Heat are 26-30. The Bulls are 23-35. So realistically, the Sixers can only really, in my opinion, compete for that 10th spot. Unless the Heat, then again, I'll take that back. Because the Heat are only 1-5, 1-6 since the Jimmy Butler trade. So they're in a tailspin. So there is a bit of a shot, considering that the Heat are probably going to continue to slide a bit. The Bulls are the Bulls. The Nets are the Nets. So the Sixers could theoretically make a run. And they probably can make a run for that 9th spot and get into the play-in tournament. And I guess at that point, anything is anything. You know what I'm saying? But the problem is Joel Embiid he's all fucked up. I think the Sixers right now are probably looking at, do we just completely can this season, sit Joel? You know, does he have surgery? Do we blow this thing up? Do we try to give it one last time, one last go around, whatever the case may be? Because I do think the Sixers organization said something to Paul. I think they said something about, look, man, it's not a good look. I think they said something to him, and from what I've read about Paul George, what I've heard players say about him, he pays attention to what is said out there about him. And he probably sees it's not a good look. Because, I mean, who started this anyway? Like, with players podcasting during the season? Was it Draymond? I want to say Draymond's like the first active player that I can remember doing podcasts during the regular season. I mean, I've seen players do podcasts after they retired, or I've seen them do podcasts during the off season, but not while they're playing. The first one I saw was Draymond. And oddly enough, Draymond's podcast is the one that's not really popping now. It's other guys. And, you know, look, the same can be said about Jalen Brunson and, what was it, Josh Hart? You know, I would be surprised if the Knicks organization say something to them about them. You know, you guys can't beat the best teams, but your podcast. Now, you could argue, well, what difference does it make if they're not doing a podcast? Well, I mean, you could make the argument like they're putting a lot of their energy into things outside of basketball at this point in time. Like the truly great players, the championship level guys, like the players who were the dynasty leaders, like Magic and Bird and Magic and Kobe, Bill Russell, especially Magic, well, all those guys actually, they had a tendency to have a singular focus when it comes to basketball. They had blinders on. They didn't let other things distract them. And that obsessiveness definitely played a major factor, plus their talent, into them being the winners that they ultimately were. And, you know, it just doesn't look good when the Sixers lose by 30 to a horrible team. Paul George does next to nothing, and then he's laughing, yucking up on his podcast 3 hours later. It just doesn't look good. So salute to him for doing this. You know what I'm saying? Now, realistically, I don't think the Sixers are going to do anything, but I wish them the best. Anyway, tell me what you guys think.